Let the peace of Christ rule in your hearts, since as members of one body you were called to peace. And be thankful. Amen. As we saw with the kids' message today, trusting someone is a pretty interesting thing. We tend to make it very black and white. You either trust me or you don't. But trust is actually more of a continuum, and you can range anywhere on that spectrum from being extremely guarded, where you don't trust anyone, you don't share things, you are suspicious of everybody's motives, and you risk being isolated and alone, all the way to being completely open, where you trust absolutely everyone, you ignore red flags, and you're pretty easily exploited. So where do you tend to fall? Are you willing to take on the risks and potential harm that could come your way because you're a pretty trusting person? Or do you regularly say the only person you can really rely on is yourself? There's kind of a little thought experiment we can run through to think about this a little bit. It's called the Monty Hall effect. So let's say I tell you, pick a door, one or two. And you pick door number one. Behind door number one is a brand new car. And I say, you can take the car, or you can open up mystery door number 3 and maybe get something even better. How many of you would pick mystery door number 3? Everybody's like, in this economy, you just take the car, right? Yeah, the question is, would you leave behind something that's guaranteed, something you can see right there that's in front of you, or are you going to take a chance with the other one? And I'll let you know, only about 12% of people would look behind door number 3 and potentially risk it all for a better prize. Now, I know there's a lot of different factors that weigh in on this thing, like what kind of car are we talking about here? Do I have to pay taxes on it if I take it? What's the chances of something good being behind door number 3? But I think maybe one of the biggest ones is, do you trust me? Do you trust the person making the claim? And that matters a lot. Like, if it's your first time meeting me today, you're going to wonder, like, what's this guy up to if I offered you this door thing? But if you've known me for 20 years and you are my friend, you're going to have faith and trust me. I hope. There are so many different factors that weigh in here, but I'll admit, no matter what we're talking about, when you're making that kind of decision, it does take a certain amount of faith and trust to leave something that you can see, something you know, for something that you can't. Because people, let's just admit it, we're sensory. We like what we can see and touch. We like the things that we can actually know. And that's why a lot of people pit facts and faith against each other, like they're mortal enemies, and they're incompatible. With facts, you have evidence. You have these things you can see, touch, and know for sure, but that isn't the way it works with faith. With faith, you don't have any evidence. You're just holding on to hope against hope. If you tell somebody, I just trust things are going to work out, you're probably going to get some eye rolls. You don't know what the outcome is going to be. And that's why we sometimes use the phrase blind faith. Because you don't really see, you don't really know that things are going to work out the way you think they will. But the thing is, when the Bible talks about faith, it says that it is anything but blind. When God defines faith for us like he does in Hebrews, he puts it this way: faith is confidence in what we hope for and assurance about what we do not see. So the kind of faith the Bible is going to talk about is anything but blind. It's confident, it's sure, it's just as good as facts. But how can that be? Well, I think if you want to find these kinds of blessings in faith, that confidence, the assurance that you can only find in faith, it's all about the relationship you have with the one who's making the claim that you believe in. So the focus for our sermon today is going to be in Genesis chapter 15. It is printed in your service folder. I got it up here on the screen as well. Let's start by just looking at the very first verse. After this, the word of the Lord came to Abram in a vision. Do not be afraid, Abram. I am your shield, your very great reward. While this story is a pretty landmark event in Abram's life, there was actually a lot leading up to it. So Abram and his wife Sarai were living in a city called Ur, which was to the north of modern-day Israel today. And while they were living there, the Lord called Abram to pack up his family, everything he owned, and go to the land that he would show to them. He didn't even give them a destination. He just said, I'll let you know when you get there. And the real kicker with all of this is that Abram was 75 and Sarai was 65 when the Lord called them to do this. You know how hard it is to get grandma and grandpa to leave the home that they love and move to a place that's going to be better for them? Like, if anyone else would have come and told them to do this, if anyone would have told them to pick up and leave the place that they saw and they knew for a place that they had never seen and didn't know, they would have told him that he was crazy. But because it was God, they believed him. And they did it. So here in chapter 15, we are catching up with Abram and Sarai about 5 years after they made that move. And now the Lord is coming with even more blessings. Do not be afraid, Abram. I am your shield. Right there, we have our first note for today. So if you like taking notes, let's write this down. Faith means I don't have to fear. The Lord told Abram he didn't have anything to be afraid of. Why? Because God himself was his shield. I want to take a second and explain exactly what God is promising to Abram here. Let's think about it this way. We have this feeling of safety and relief when we have something that would protect us from something that we would normally be vulnerable to. I have had 2 kids going on 3 learn how to ride a 2-wheel pedaled bike. How much relief do you think their mother feels knowing that they wear a helmet when they are riding? If you go on a hike in Smoky Mountain National Park, right as the spring hibernation is ending for the bears and they're coming out of their dens, you feel a little safer if you have some bear spray on your belt. Some teens have arrangements with their parents that when they're hanging out with friends, they'll turn location services on their phone the whole time because it just goes a long way to relieving anxiety and fear back home. The reason I'm being so clear about this right now is because I think we tend to misunderstand what God means when he tells Abram that he is his shield. All of those things we just listed, do they prevent bad things from happening? No, not necessarily. But that's not the purpose of a shield. A shield doesn't prevent attacks from happening. It protects you when the attack happens. A shield can help you take a blow that normally would have put you down for the count. A shield can help you when and if those bad things ever pop up. If something scary does happen, you have some place to go for safety, and in that protection, there's relief. So this faith that Abram had in his God, a faith that led him away from his home to start a life of wandering wherever the Lord told him to wander, meant that Abram was connected to a God who was his shield and safety. Your faith connects you to the same God. And it doesn't mean that you'll never experience debt or bankruptcy. It doesn't mean that you and the people you love will be immune to every single disease. It doesn't mean that tragedy will sidestep you at every turn. It is not a guarantee that suffering will always be something will be something that you never have to worry about in your entire life. No, but what it is saying is that when those things do strike, you have the perfect shield, you have the perfect protection that you can get behind, and that shield will absorb a lot of that blow for you. When the Bible talks about this kind of thing, another word it likes to use is refuge. And I have been drilling that word into the heads of teens and youth group kids for years now. A refuge is basically a safe space, a place that you can run to for security, safety, protection, and relief. That's what you have when your faith is in God, when He is your shield. I love the way David talks about it in one of his Psalms. Trust in Him at all times, you people. Pour out your hearts to Him, for God is our refuge. That's the God Abram put his faith and trust in. That's the God we put our faith and trust in. A safe place. The shield we can hide behind when life gets tough. The one who will shelter us with His safety and protection and promises that He will be our shield. And not to sound too much like one of those TV infomercials, but wait, there is more. God keeps going with His promise of blessings that He gives to Abram here. After this, the word of the Lord came to Abram in a vision. Do not be afraid, Abram. I am your shield, your very great reward. That's actually going to be our next note here. Faith means a reward. As if it weren't enough having the Almighty Lord Himself being your shield, your refuge, there's even more. Faith's connection with God means that there's a reward. There's something we get out of this deal. Abram has some questions about this reward, though. But Abram said, Sovereign Lord, what can you give me since I remain childless, and the one who will inherit my estate is Eliezer of Damascus? And Abram said, You've given me no children, so a servant in my household will be my heir. Lord, I trust you. I listened when you told me to leave my home and start this life of wandering that I'm living right now. I trust you. But when you talk about this reward, what can you give me that's even possible? A foreigner who is the head servant in my household will get everything after Sarai and I are gone. I trust you, but what can you give me? What can you give me that's even a possibility? And we have to admit there are days when we're right there with Abram. Faith connects us to our relief from fear, our shield, God Himself. But what for? What am I getting out of this deal? God, what promise can you possibly give me that will make up for all the lack in my life? But here's God's answer. Then the word of the Lord came to him. This man will not be your heir, but a son who is your own flesh and blood will be your heir. He took him outside and said, Look up at the sky and count the stars, if indeed you can count them. Then he said to him, So shall your offspring be. God makes a guarantee that blows the mind. Childless Abram will become Father Abraham. Father to more people than you can impossibly begin to count. God's answer to Abraham's question, to our questions, is that He ups the ante. He promises a reward that exceeds expectation and defies possibility. This reward is all about God because it is a reward that only He can give. Only God can give a reward like this to a childless man and woman. And with that great illustration, try counting the stars. If you can count them, God is calling to Abraham, trust in me. Have faith in me and my promises, Abram. And our reward of faith works the same way. It's something that only God can give to us. Remember what He said to Abram earlier, I am your shield, your very great reward. God Himself is the reward. Having a relationship with God is the reward. Why? Because we haven't earned it or deserved it. But through faith, we still get to enjoy that awesome blessing. And instead of leading us out to try to count the stars, God instead points us to the cross, where God connects us with himself, where the facts of all of our sin and wrongdoing and what they have done to our relationship with God are washed away forever. The place where faith in God and his works and his accomplishments and his promises takes over. The place where we're at the cross by faith in what Jesus has done, we receive our greatest reward. It's a reward Abram enjoyed too. Abram believed the Lord, and he credited it to him as righteousness. It's going to be our last note for today. Faith means righteousness. That is the greatest reward. Because his faith rested in the right place, because he trusted in his God and in his promises, Abraham was considered right with God. And that's all we mean when we talk about righteousness. His relationship with God was in the right place. Abram and God were good. He believed in the Lord, and it was credited to him as righteousness. It wasn't about what Abram did. It's not how hard he believed in the Lord. It just says he believed, and it was credited to his account. And it's that simple for us too. Listen to this again from what we read earlier in Romans chapter 4. It was not through the law that Abraham and his offspring received the promise that he would be heirs of the world, but through the righteousness that comes by faith. Therefore, the promise comes by faith, so that it may be by grace and may be guaranteed to all Abraham's offspring, not only to those who are of the law, but to those who have the faith of Abraham. You know what that means? It means righteousness is credited to your account too. Not by doing things right, but because your faith is in the right place. Your faith rests in Jesus. You trust that when he said it is finished on the cross, he meant your days of being separated from God because of your sin, those are finished. You trust that when Jesus died on the cross, at the same time he was giving his perfect life, his righteousness, and his perfect relationship with God the Father, he was giving that to you as a gift. You trust that Jesus' perfect life is now credited to your account. And how does it get there? Through faith. Because your faith is in the right place. And so now that we have the same rightness with God that Abram enjoyed, rightness with God that is ours because of the work of Jesus, and by faith and trust in him, what happens now? Well, now we just embrace the promises that God gives us. If you're going to hold on to anything in this life, hold on to the promises that God has given you. And remember, it's not how strongly we're holding on to them. It doesn't mean that there won't be lapses in that faith sometimes. This same man we learned about today, Abram, had not once but twice this moment where he lied to a king and told him that his wife was his sister so that they wouldn't kill him and take his wife to be their own. Does that sound like a guy who believes that the Lord is his shield and refuge? He also had a son named Ishmael with Sarai's maidservant. Does that sound like a guy who's embracing the promises of God? But the important thing is that even when there are lapses in our faith, even when we struggle to hold on to the things that we can't see for ourselves, our faith is still all about our God. It is all about our Savior. And even in those moments when you stumble and trip, when your faith feels weak, remember who your faith rests in. Remember this, he who promised is faithful. Even when we're not, even when we don't trust, we have the promise that God, the one you trust in, is always faithful, and he will always be faithful. To you and to everyone who puts their trust in him, faithful to every single one of his promises that he's made to you in his word. This faith isn't great because it's so strong. It's not about never wavering. Faith is what it is because of who it rests in. Faith looks to God, and it trusts in God. It trusts in the one who's making these promises. That's the essence of faith. We rely on our shield and refuge. We look to the one who makes impossible promises and keeps every single one of them. We trust in the one who gives Jesus' righteousness as a gift to those who trust in him. So if God tells you there's something better behind door number 3, believe him. Even if you can't see it, even if it seems impossible, faith tells you, believe him. Because he gives blessing after blessing to those who put their trust in him. Look to the cross, the same way Abram looked up at those stars, and see countless blessings from a God who says to you today, trust me. Have faith. Amen.